Hey, my friends, welcome back to the Soul Podcasting Podcast. I'm Demetria, your host, and I am super excited to dive into real, authentic, real-world conversations with you, with creatives and storytellers and purpose-driven podcasters who are using their voice to shift culture and to leave legacy. So today is super exciting because I have my very first guest for this podcast. And if you're usually tuning in to this podcast on your favorite audio platform, now's your chance to actually watch this on YouTube. So head on over to my YouTube channel. I will leave a link in those show notes for you. And that way you can see our interview today. And hey, if you're a podcaster that would love to tell your story, I'm opening up guest slots for upcoming episodes. So if you feel like your message needs to be heard, check out the link in the show notes once again and apply for a slot to be on the show. Now for today's episode, I'm sitting down with an amazing creative. Her name is Angela Ross, and she's the host of SoCal Voices. We're going to be talking about so many things, like what it really takes to start your podcast and to move past your overthinking. Also, how to amplify stories that matter in your community, why legacy podcasting goes deeper than just content, and how to stay consistent and soulful in the process. So this one's for the podcaster who's sitting on the idea, unsure about whether or not you want to start, or looking to go deeper with their mission. So if that's you, stay tuned and let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Soul Podcasting Podcast. And this is our very first interview on this show. I'm so excited to have Angela Ross with us today. She is the host of SoCal Voices. She is a former broadcast journalist and award-winning leader of media, public affairs, marketing communications, and public relations divisions in government and healthcare. And I cannot wait to get into this conversation with her because I have so many questions. So Angela, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you. You have your podcast called SoCal Voices. Mm-hmm. And so on this show, what I want to do is bring out voices, people who have started their own shows. You have been in this thing for a minute, like a while. So you understand podcasting and broadcast media, journalism, all of this. And so I'm wondering, like, what inspired you to start your own podcast, and how did you step into the podcasting space?
I got into the podcasting space because of my frustrations and all of the anxiety that I was feeling as a result of the COVID pandemic and the killing of George Floyd. Yes. Those two things were the main drivers that took me over the line to say, okay, I need to start doing something. And I did it really to work through my own feelings about everything that was going on. So much negativity, so much disillusionment, all of that. And so I thought, what can I do to get my mind sort of back in a safer, saner place for myself? And I thought, I need to focus on things that make me feel safe and make me feel good and are consistent with my values. Yeah. And so I thought about doing SoCal Voices as a way to bring in some positivity, because I knew that there were good people out there. I knew everything wasn't horrible, right? Yeah. There are people out there who are doing good things in community. That's right. They don't get a lot of focus. They don't get a lot of attention. And I just needed to feel better, to be quite honest. Yeah. And so that's really everything that sort of came together. And I said, okay, I'm going to start this thing. And I did.
And you did. And you did. So would you say it was like therapy in some way?
In some ways, yes. It was very cathartic for me to do this. And, I wasn't speaking solely about the things that were happening with COVID and with the George Floyd situation. There was an episode about that, but it was more about just working through all of the terrible, awful, and just wanting to find a space where this feels better for me and we can still talk about tough things, but I just feel better in this space.
Yes, absolutely. So did you have any mindset hurdles, or did you just press go and said, we're doing it?
I press go. I mean,
Okay.
you know, I had a lot of support. My husband was really nudging me. I knew I had the technical, the infrastructure chops to
Right.
do this as a former broadcaster. That really wasn't the issue. Am I going to be able to get episodes in on time? Can I
Yeah.
write? Can I do this? Those weren't my concerns. That was already done. It was really just about how do I do this in a way that is meaningful, impactful, and again, helps me stay aligned with what the positive things that I'm trying to accomplish.
Right. That's great. So I'm pretty sure you're very choosy about who's on your show. So how do you choose your guests? Because you do have this, you have a brand mission. And when you got into this space, it was to find that positivity in SoCal. So how do you choose your guests?
Well, my guest sources are varied.
Hmm.
My personal and professional network is one lane.
Hmm.
And then I often hear from public relations people who have clients who want to be on the show. They've done their homework and they
Yeah.
see what the brand is. And so they say, hey, can I get my client on your show to talk about X, Y, or Z? And then another source that I use is podcast matchmaking services. Yes, that's a thing.
Yep.
And there are some really good services out there that I've used. Podmatch is in particular one that has been quite helpful to me, and that's where I find my people. And people
Right.
pitch me directly.
Yeah.
Friends and family sometimes say, "Hey, you need to talk to so and so." So it's all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of that together makes great networking. And you
Yes.
will always find people who want to be a part of your show. So now have you encountered any stories that really stood out to you on your podcast?
Oh yeah. I mean, there are a lot of people who really provided some real meaningful and memorable episodes for me. But I think if I have to narrow it down
Mhm.
to two, if I can do two,
Yeah. Yeah.
one is an older episode, and then one is a more recent episode. The older episode is was with a woman. Her name is Susan Partovi. She's a physician.
Mhm.
She's based in LA, and she helps treat homeless people on the street. She is known as the Skid Row Doctor.
Wow.
And the episode with her for me was just incredible because, homelessness, drug addiction, these are all the things that we as society, we turn away from. We cross the street when we see somebody in the throes of this kind of situation. She just walks right up to them and says, hey, what do you need? And she treats them right there on the spot.
Wow.
She has a book called Renegade MD. And I think for anyone who is interested in that kind of mission and service to others,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. I think that was one that really touched me.
I love
The other one, more recent, was with a woman who is a teacher. She is trying to help enhance the confidence of young girls. We know that children are generally born with about the same level of confidence, but at a young age, usually around fourth or fifth grade, girls start to taper off and they start finding all the reasons that they are not good enough. And the boys just continue to climb. Our society tends to nurture that. So she is working to help build confidence in young girls through her organization, her club called the 2020 Club. And that was one that really touched me too, because she just helps young girls understand that they are fierce and they can go slay. And they can learn this in the fourth and fifth grade and how that helps them on their trajectory to be whatever marvelous, fantastic thing they want to be. And she is just fantastic. So that
Sounds
was
like
the other episode that really touched me.
you've had some wonderful guests on your show. You have. And just the opportunity to speak to so many voices with different experiences that we can bring to the table, bring to the forefront through our podcast. That's what makes podcasting so meaningful to me. And I see that that's what you're doing, and it's kind of what brings you alive as well.
Yeah.
And so that said, just looking at us, we are Black women in this space. And I feel like there's some way that we're able to navigate being authentic in this space, which might be a little different in others. And so that the fact that we have our own shows, we're able to kind of be authentic and navigate that. So how have you found authority in the podcasting space and just like how has that been for you, just finding your freedom to be authentic through podcasting?
It's been really enriching for me and very empowering for me. You know, I'm not a person who has struggled with imposter syndrome. I think between education and experience and just, family influence, it's like, look, get prepared, go out there and do what you need to do. There's no room for excuses. There's no room for letting other people tell you all the 50 reasons why you can't be in the room and all of that. It's like, no, know your stuff. You have to do your homework and be prepared. But if you know you've got that, then you just walk in there and take up space. And
Do it.
it's not your problem if other people can't get with that.
That's right. I
It's
love
just
that.
not. I think the other thing is just the sense of just wanting to be real and help people and to make an impact in a way that is helpful to people, and people can see it. They can feel it when they're talking to you. They can tell whether you're, brown nosing or whether you're just trying to do your thing. I think the other thing is not aiming for perfection. Aim for done. And that's what I try to do. You want it to be good. You don't want it to be like, oh gosh, this is really bad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, people appreciate the reality of what you're doing. Everything doesn't have to be super duper polished all the time, especially if you don't have a huge team behind you to make it that way. There's power in independence. So
yes,
that's kind of where I am.
I have so many responses to so many things that you said just now. You made a lot of points here, and I'm just like, yes, yes, yes to all of it. Mm-hmm. And I love that you just said, done is better than perfect. Just get it done. And that's one of the things that I want to reiterate on the show as well, is that if anyone listening was on the fence about starting a show, you've been wanting to do it, you can do it. Just get out there and start your show. There's so many people that will rally around you to support you in doing this work. So that said, we are content creators. And the thing is that podcasting isn't just about creating content. It's about, I believe, building legacy. I believe it's about having a space in whatever your niche is where you are an authority, a voice in that field, and that you're making a difference. And so how do you kind of balance the idea of churning out content versus making an impact?
I focus on what is going to align with where I really want this podcast to be. Mm-hmm. And I try to focus also on what listeners tell me that they want. And with me being a Southern Californian, I'm aware of the pain points, mm-hmm. and I want to try to address those as best I can with people. So that's a really good question that you ask. And I think what I would say is, when this cycle is over, whenever it is, I want people to say, if they say Angela Ross through SoCal Voices amplified unrepresented voices, she broadened people's understanding of what it means to be a Southern Californian and who Southern Californians are. And she built community and enhanced understanding. If they say those things, then I did my job. And that's what I aim for.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect. That's what we all need to be thinking about, like what our mission is when we're doing this work. And I love how you so nicely put this, that, those are the things that you value. And so if you hear that, and if that's the message that you're bringing out to the world, you've done your work. And so I love that.
Thank you. You got to know your why. I think, for the folks listening to your show, it's why are you doing this? Yeah. And then stay dialed in on that. And that will be your guide always.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Know your why, and keep reminding ourselves every time we're doing this work, because it's a lot behind the scenes, right?
Oh yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah. And it's easy to get distracted, and to go down the rabbit hole to stuff that's not really what you said you wanted to do. It's like, come back. Get
so many rabbit holes, so many things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But you're right. Keeping that why in front of us like a North Star, just staying focused. So how about we talk about a little bit of the practical things like tools and strategies, things like that. So do you have a certain workflow that makes things easier for you? Certain tools that you really like?
Yeah. And I will say, again, the fact that I have been a reporter, the journalism part of me just sort of, helps with all of that. So I want to be genuine in trying to give people advice there, because I think I come packaged with a certain set of skills that some podcasters don't have when they come into this space. Mm-hmm. So what I would say is, whatever you don't like doing, whatever feels weird and is taking up too much time and you don't want to do it, either automate it or hire somebody else to do it. That's what I would say. And so for me, I know how to edit audio. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we used to have to use a grease pencil to mark reel-to-reel tape and take a razor blade and cut audio in order to splice it together. Ultimately, in my last radio newsroom, we were in a digital space, and it was digital audio like it is now for most podcasts. But I know how to do it. I don't like doing it. It's not my favorite part.
Right.
So it's like, I want to write, I want to talk to people, I want to get my guests coordinated, I want to be all in the concept space. I don't want to be editing sound waves. Right. And so I've hired someone who is fantastic, who lives and breathes that part. And so I can relax on that and focus on the things that I'm good at. So that's what I would say. I would just say, look, don't spend time and energy on the stuff that doesn't bring you the greatest joy. Always think in terms of your highest and best use. What is the best use of my skill and my time? And focus on that, and use tools to help you do everything else. Yeah, that's what
wonderful.
There are many out
advice.
there. What I would say I use is not the thing that someone else would use.
Right.
So
right.
You just do your research and find things.
I love that answer because it's really about finding what works for you. And there's millions, there's so many tools out there. There's so much, but everyone comes packaged with a different set of technical skill and know-how and tools. And then also what you said is, if you don't like it, if you don't like doing it, hand it off to someone who loves doing it. Stay in your zone of genius. Right. Do what you love to do.
That's the most important advice I think that I would say. Because when I started my podcast, I had a full-time job. I was working 40 hours a week plus. And, I had very limited time after work and on Saturday. So, there was not a lot of time to be piddling around with things that were going to eat up time and take me longer. Why would I do that when I can hand this over to someone who can knock it out much more efficiently and at better quality than I could?
Yeah, I love that you knew what your zone of genius was, and that's what you stuck with. So some of the things that you're sharing right now is just kind of like that energy boost that we need, especially a new podcaster or someone who is about to start podcasting, kind of on the edge, like, I'm not sure I'm going to have time to do this. I have a full-time job. What you just said is very encouraging. It's like, okay, I did this with a full-time job, working on the weekends. So what advice would you give to a new podcaster just starting out who is kind of like, when do I get this done? Can this be manageable?
Yeah, I would say, well, first of all, I would say congratulations to starting, because that would be the first thing. Start. Don't stop convincing yourself that this is something you can't do. It's something you can do. So start. And then, you just have to be real protective of your time. Be real clear about what your I love the way you put that zone of genius is, and focus on those things. Hand off the things that are not your strengths, and let someone else or let a tool handle that for you. And I would just say carve out time. You have to do things like blocking, where you say, okay, between this hour and this hour, I'm going to do this thing. And then when that quitting time comes, honor that. Yeah. And move on to the other things. And so when I was working full time, as I said, it was evenings after work, and then it was on Saturday and Sunday. That's when I did my thing. And it usually was a couple of hours, late morning Saturday. And then even in the evenings after work, I would say, okay, I'm only going to do this from, 5 to 7 or, 6 to, whatever it is, 6 to 8. And then you stop so that you can continue to have balance in your life, because that's really important to maintain. Figure it out, what works for you, but set yourself up with limits so that you just don't, again, go down this rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, it's 11:30 and I'm still,
What I'm hearing right now is boundaries.
Yes.
Setting boundaries for yourself. And then what you called what did you call the time budget?
Blocking.
Time blocking, and saying between this time and this time, this is the project I'm working on, nothing else. And then when that time is over, it's over.
You have to get up and go do the other thing or go to bed.
Right. Or go to bed. Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of people are just like, I don't know if I can do this. It's because we're not being mindful of our time, looking at our time as like, we can budget this amount of time and only that amount of time. And it's okay if we have to roll this over for another day or another time. We can only do so much.
And the other thing I would add is you do this all the time. If you work full time, you're doing this all the time for somebody else, for the company that you work for. You schedule and you manage and you allow so much time and you set up boundaries for all of that. Learn to do it for you. You've been doing it for everybody else. This is your time and your turn. And this is your chance to do this for yourself. So apply many of the same best practices that you reserve for your employer for you. You deserve it. You're worth it.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that. Thank you for that encouragement and for just like that boost of like, yes, you can do this. Do it for yourself. You're worth it. So SoCal Voices is going places, and I know that you have more things on the horizon. So what do you think is next for SoCal Voices? What do you have on the radar, and how can our listeners reach you and listen to the show?
Well, what I have on the radar right now, and I think maybe this will be good for the folks who are listening to your show, is I'm doing a little bit of onion peeling, a little bit of strategic planning, trying to get some feedback from folks who've been listening to the show. I have some ideas about the next season and the next direction that I want to take the show in. So I'm getting some ideas about that. And where people can find me is they can go on SoCalVoices.com. That's the website. They can find me on social at SoCal Voices, and send me a DM. Send me some questions. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for being my first interview on this show. I appreciate you, Angela.
Thank you for having me. I love talking with you. Thanks so much.
You're so welcome.